When you think about what is your value proposition, it's no longer enough to be competent at being able to manage money. That's not sufficient. Maybe 5, 10, 15 years ago, you were aces, perfectly fine. That by itself, not enough, because there's plenty of firms out there that do an exceptional job managing money. What's different? What's unique about you?
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Connected Advisor. I'm your host, Kyle Van Pelt, co-founder and CEO of Milemarker. And today I am joined by another co-founder and CEO. This is Gerald Goldberg. He is the co-founder and CEO of GYL Financial Synergies. They're a firm out of Connecticut, and we're going to talk all about how they're growing and hopefully get some great learnings from Jerry today as we talk about the RIA space as a whole. So Jerry, thanks so much for joining the show.
Thank you for having me, Kyle.
Absolutely. So I start every one of these shows off effectively the same, and this is going to be no different. Jerry, I've found that everybody in this industry has had an interesting path here. It might be a traditional path or it might be an untraditional path. But what everybody has in common is that they have a moment in their life that I refer to as their money moment. And this money moment is that time when you really kind of said, light bulb goes off. This is what I want to do for my career, right? So for you, Jerry, what was that money moment that made you want to get into this industry in this space?
Sure. So by way of background, I was always interested and passionate about the capital markets. Although when I was coming out of school, I guess I was in a rush and I was focused in on a different career path. So 16 when I entered college, 20 when I went to law school, 23 when I started practicing. And after 6+ years of practicing law, I had my midlife crisis at the ripe old age of 29. And I thought about what I was doing. And although I very much enjoyed a number of the people that I had the good fortune to work with, I didn't enjoy the type of law that I was doing. I went in and I was supposed to be doing front-end commercial real estate deals. And in 1990, they were letting people go. So I took a left in the road and went into workouts and restructurings. And it was a great experience because you really, during the early 90s, all roads led through the bankruptcy courts. And so I got a chance to be exposed to lots of different types of law, lots of different types of business issues. And at the same time, though, I didn't really enjoy what I was doing. And because I wasn't enjoying what I was doing, and also because I had 2 small children, babies at home, I wanted to make sure that whatever I was going to do, I was going to be passionate and authentic about it. And I didn't feel that I could achieve that with practicing law. So fortunately, my wife was very supportive, and she said, go ahead and explore your passions. Go ahead and pursue something that you're really interested in. And that's really what led me in 1996 to go into investments.
Yeah. So you were always passionate about capital markets. I heard that, and loud and clear, and I'd love to talk a little bit more about that. But with the foundation of the law background, the law degree and the career, you probably could have launched into anything really, right? You could have gone into, being a sports agent. You could have started, your own business. You could have joined as a general counsel, something, et cetera.
There are definitely a lot of different options that were available to me. One thing that I learned a long time ago, though, is if you want to truly be authentic and you want to be genuine and fully engaged and operate in what I think has sometimes been referred to as your zone of genius, be passionate and be engaged in whatever that subject matter is. And so I really, as I had indicated, always found it fascinating how the capital markets worked. I think that in the United States, we could probably do a better job helping our younger adults understand why the capital markets are so important and why capitalism is important. But that we can cover on another day. But for me, if you combine that passion for the capital markets together with the fiduciary training that I received as an attorney, where as part of the code of professional ethics, you're instructed, you're directed, you're educated to always be acting in the best interest of your client. So it was a very easy switch for me. It was a very logical switch to say, okay, how do I apply myself in the best interest of clients in the investment capacity? And that was certainly something that, although it wasn't really as widespread, certainly there were people doing it at that time in the mid 90s, but there were other business models that were more prevalent at that time.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I'm just curious too, and it sounds like you alluded to it a little bit there. I've heard from many people from different industries that the legal background is such a great foundation. And maybe you're talking about it a little bit here with the fiduciary aspect. They have the fiduciary standard there as well. But anything else stick out to you as well as like a foundation from the legal profession that helps you be successful here?
Yeah, for attorneys right now who might be listening to this and are still practicing law and living a life of quiet desperation, I would strongly recommend that you take those legal chops and consider a career in investments and wealth advisory work, because you have the opportunity to help people. To your question, Kyle, what are some of those transferable skills? You're taught how to think analytically. You're taught to really deconstruct complicated fact patterns and then understand what are the issues, what are the rules, then apply them and then draw an appropriate conclusion. So there's a lot of skill sets that you develop, not only in law school, but certainly out in practice. And then if you have an interest in the aptitude for the investment side, you can apply those. Certainly the ability to communicate with clients is really important. And that's certainly something else that many attorneys learn how to do with some level of competence as they continue to develop and grow. So it's not to say that you can have wonderful and amazing wealth advisors, investment advisors come from other backgrounds. But I think that especially today, and especially in the very complicated, highly regulated industry that is wealth advisory work, whether it be from a compliance standpoint, regulations, cybersecurity, HR, you name it. There are so many different bodies of law and so many things that people need to be aware of that certainly having that legal background is an advantage.
Well stated. I think that's fantastic. So I want to pivot a little bit and just let's start talking about GYL. I'd love for you to maybe describe a little bit more about what GYL does, because when I was researching for this and I looked it up, it doesn't sound like you position it like a typical RIA or wealth management firm. I think some of the language I saw is you provide consulting services to corporations and municipalities. You're helping high net worth private clients, and you also help structure qualified retirement plans. So, that's kind of spanning. It sounds like maybe you do a mix of institutional and retail work or things like that. But talk to us a little bit about GYL and how you've set it up.
Sure. Well, before I go any further, I would be remiss if I didn't express my gratitude for my partners. We have a total of 14 partners, and as well as our team members. In total, all the team members, including partners, there are nearly 70 of us. Whatever I do, I wouldn't be able to accomplish if it wasn't done with the support and the collaboration of those other partners. So in terms of what we do for private clients, we help them live their life on their terms and make sure that the financial aspects of their life are being appropriately managed. What we often say is, let our family take care of your family. And the foundation for how we do what we do and what are the priorities at GYL start with the three pillars: our clients, our team members, and our community. So what that means is that anything that we're going to do at GYL has to be tied back to at least one of those pillars. Is it something that's going to help a client? Is it an additional service? What exactly is that doing in that regard? If not, is it somehow going to enhance or support our team members' capabilities? Is it going to make their life easier? And then certainly last but not least, for us, we're big believers in giving back to the community, because if we're not paying it forward and we're not thinking about people outside of ourselves and our clients, then we think that that's an incomplete picture. It's within that context that what happens at GYL happens. And so everything embraces a we over me type mindset in terms of how we come together to solve for whatever the issues are that the client has. So as an example, if you're a client with whatever number of assets or amount of assets that you have, we're first going to spend some time doing a deep dive, understanding your needs so that you know that you are seen and that you are heard and that we're paying attention to you. It's not cookie cutter. It's about understanding what those needs are. Then going beyond that initial kind of understanding type discussion, we do a lot of financial planning, comprehensive financial planning, depending upon what your needs are. That could be dialed up or dialed down. We service clients who range from what is often referred to as mass affluent to high net worth to ultra high net worth. And then ultimately, we also work with institutional clients as well. So as you might imagine, not all clients are created equal. And what I mean by that is not that they don't all get serviced and supported, but each of them have unique needs. And so because of that, we make sure that we tailor the services and support that we provide to those clients to be sure to be able to address those unique needs of those clients. So beyond the investment piece, which I'll talk a little bit about in a moment, and we often refer to as multiple arrows in our quiver. So you've got the investment piece, the financial planning piece. For clients, we've actually just rolled out, and actually in the process of rolling out, aging life care solutions, because that's one of those needs when you think about, and this is maybe something we'll touch upon in the future, like what's coming. And what are the things that we should really be, it should be on people's radars, thinking about the continuum of care and how you support your clients. It's not going to be enough to just be capable or competent at managing money. You're going to need to do more. That's going to be really important, not only to create a moat around your clients, but also to attract new clients, because they're looking for things that distinguish you from other people. I mean, I think for us, one of the things that distinguishes us is that, when I say that bit about the clients, team members, and community, it doesn't just sound good. It actually also has the extra advantage of being true. So when people get a chance to speak to our existing clients or hear about some of the work that we're doing out in the community, it resonates, and they know that we don't just, talk the talk, but we walk the walk as well.
Well stated. That's awesome. I appreciate you laying that out. We will unpack some of that. I actually want to start with some of you mentioned philanthropy, and I had a note here about one of your core focuses at GYL is attracting, retaining, and developing the best people. And that includes investing in their learning development. But I also had a note here that you are really passionate about empowering those people towards philanthropy. I mean, why is that important? Most people, hey, it's great that you want to be involved in philanthropy, Jerry, or anybody else, or maybe I want to, but why is that important from a sort of a corporate standpoint of we want this to be something we're empowering our employees to do?
Kyle, I think that you've touched on a few things here, and I think that it's important for me to state that there will be winners and there will be losers. And what I mean by that is in this industry, you're going to end up having some firms that are going to be very successful, and you're going to have others that are not going to be. I believe that one of the key elements that will separate those who will be successful versus those who will not be is the ability to attract, develop, and retain the very best people. One of the ways that you do that is certainly compensation and benefits. You have to make sure that they're competitive. You have to make sure that there's good communication with your team members, that they also are feeling heard and valued and seen. But it's important to create a community, an environment where they're excited about getting up in the morning and being there. One of the things that I have learned in my time, not only professionally, but personally, is that you build communities by bringing people together for a common mission. And that common mission, in this case, is we give back to the community. The way that we make it authentic and the way that we make it resonate with each of the team members involved is that for all of our offices, we have them vote and develop a consensus amongst themselves on a quarterly basis to determine how they want to volunteer, how they want to give back. So whether that's organizing food at a food pantry, doing a walk against cancer, volunteering at a shelter for animals, you name it. There's a varied needs and desires, but by having that engagement and participation of our team members, they're having control over that. And as with any place, we have people from all different types of walks of life, different places on the political spectrum. And what's amazing is that when you bring people together for a common mission, whether it is, addressing food insecurity or going and volunteering in a junior achievement initiative, whatever it might be, all those differences melt away. And I think that with the breakdown of community within our society, I think people want that. I think people need that. So to the extent that GYL in a very small way could provide that to the team members who are coming to work here, it's certainly in the feedback and the engagement and the interaction that we have with our team members, they say that it factors prominently into their job satisfaction.
I love that. That's super cool. I love the way you laid it out too. I totally agree that when you go do things like that, you're united around a common cause and a common reason, and your stuff kind of fades away a little bit. And so I think it's cool that you're putting that forward. I'm involved with a food insecurity nonprofit that I sit on the board of, and we do all kinds of work throughout the year, but our big thing is around Thanksgiving. And one of the things that our founder always says for that organization is it's hard for people to hear any sort of encouragement or whatever over the sound of a grumbling stomach, right? That's louder than any sort of advice or encouragement you could give them. So I love that your team is helping with those types of causes as well.
Yeah, it is something that we're really passionate about. In fact, there's a program that we're doing next week. My wife and I first got involved in this organization called More Perfect, and I've been able to press into service or seek volunteers in the GYL family to expand the work that we're doing. And so GYL is playing a really important part in helping to organize in the state of Connecticut the first symposium on public service. And so we're bringing together all these amazing leaders in the space to be able to not only inventory some of the really good programs that are happening already, but then to look how we can build upon those programs and do interesting things. So the Governor Lamont's going to be there, the CEO of AmeriCorps, the CEO of Climate Corps. We have a senator is going to be there. We have congressmen are going to be there. So it's just a super good group of people that are committed to expanding public service in our state and in our country.
That's fantastic. I love that. Okay, so that obviously is a part of the foundation of building the house that is GYL. But one thing I also found unique is you all are experiencing quite a bit of growth through the organic channel, right? So there's obviously in our industry been a ton of inorganic growth, and that's wonderful, and that's certainly a strategy. But it feels like every conference I go to recently or anything, everybody's talking about how our industry has sort of lost the muscle of organic growth has atrophied, between the money that came in to help people acquire firms and then also the greatest bull market we've experienced in, a heck of a long time, maybe ever. Growth was just happening, right? The market was providing tailwinds, M&A was providing tailwinds. People didn't have to get so great at organic growth. How are you able to keep that muscle from atrophying and make sure that GYL was still growing organically?
To be clear, there are certain muscles that on my body and beyond that need to continue to be developed. And we're certainly not resting on our laurels. And our organic growth muscle is one that we're really focused in on building out and expanding. One other thing I would say is that growth could come, as you alluded to, through either organic or inorganic means. M&A is perfectly fine if it's done in a thoughtful and strategic way. If it's being done just for the sake, growth's sake, to just get larger without really a thoughtful comprehension of how all the bits and pieces come together and how you can have that incorporated into a larger community and a larger organism where you have people pulling in unison on the same oar, then it becomes a bit of a mess. So we're big fans of inorganic growth. On the organic growth side, some of the things that we've been doing is we've been making investments in training because, as I said before, attracting, developing, and retaining your top talented people, that's job one. Because, the best way you can get towards having good organic growth is, first of all, don't lose clients. And you're going to lose clients if you're going to lose people. And if you're a revolving door, then that's just not going to work. So you really have to kind of build from the inside going out. Number one, understanding what your value proposition is. And if your value proposition isn't so valuable, then going to work on that and making sure that you are able to really deliver in a holistic way. And then when you think about what are you doing to really attract, develop, and retain those talented people, we made an investment last year in a learning and development specialist. That's an example of us investing in resources there for those team members to help them work on skill sets and capabilities and a career pathing and all that good stuff. We also made an investment in an executive director of advisory services where he's been specifically tasked in helping and assisting people on an individual basis to understand what their value prop is, and then aligning that also or synergistically looking at what that unique individual value prop is combined with what we offer and what we can provide at GYL and how best to position that. Depending upon what size of an organization you are, most firms have to don't have infinite resources. And so inevitably, if you're focused in on this, then you can't be focused on everything, because if you're focused on everything, if everything's a priority, then nothing is. So you really have to kind of think about what your specific operating model is and then appropriately prioritize. But going back to your question, is that sales is not a bad word. I can tell you, having come from a wirehouse type environment before we left that, and we're just celebrating this August will be our 8-year anniversary as part of the Focus Financial Partners family. Some environments could be hyper focused in on a sales culture, and it's growth, organic growth at any cost, and the ends justify the means. I'm not suggesting any place that I was had that philosophy, but certainly there are environments that are like that. And so for us, as being fiduciarily centric and being focused in on clients, team members, and community, we weren't and are still not a high pressure growth or die type environment. And with that said, though, if you want to go ahead and you want to see something happen, you have to track it. You have to understand it. You have to understand where it's coming from. And if it's not coming from, what's the cause for that? And then take concrete action steps to be able to move the needle. So it's, again, going back to your question before about, or your suggestion that there's real value associated with coming from a legal background, we're trained to problem solve. Whatever the particular subject is, like, okay, we have to solve for X. Well, what are we doing? What are we doing that actually works to further facilitate that? What are the things that we're doing or not doing that are hindering our ability to advance? And in this case, in organic growth, it starts with understanding your business, having an appropriately segmented approach. What is that value prop? How are you communicating that value prop? Are you doing that with centers of influence? Are you doing that in some other way? Are you engaging with outside parties that provide you with leads? One of the great things about this industry is that there is no one way to accomplish things. We've done it one way, but I'm sure there are many models that have been successful and effective. But for us, it's about making sure that we double down on authenticity and making sure that we are able to add value and that we're able to communicate that and track it and kind of focus in on the things that are enhancing what you're trying to, or moving you closer to what you're trying to accomplish.
This podcast is brought to you by Turncast. We make game-changing content for fintech and financial services companies. Learn more at turncast.com.
There's a couple things I want to unpack there, but you sort of teed something up that I'm going to take, which is, you said there's no one way to do things successfully in this industry. I totally agree. But I know you have a pretty unique take on technology and things like that. And I feel like one of the conversations I have a lot in this industry is firms buy this technology off the shelf, right? That you have to have. And then you have to try and match it to your way of doing things. And again, I think everybody does things somewhat differently or whatever, right? Everybody builds processes and things the way that work for them. So I'd love to just talk a little bit about technology, how you're thinking about it, and how you're marrying technology with GYL's way of doing things, because I'm sure it's different than how other people are doing it.
Sure. Great question. So first of all, technology is a critical building block for the modern day advisor, the modern day advisory firm. You're not getting out of the dugout without having some sort of effective tech stack or technology stack, which puts all these pieces together, whether it's a CRM, so that you're able to track when you're communicating with your clients and you're following up with those clients, whether it's an effective performance reporting system, whether it's an internal system where you could instant message other team members, how you communicate with your clients. So there's all different pieces of when you think about what your value proposition is. Okay, what do I do? Well, I manage money. Okay. Well, what else do you do? Well, I do financial planning. Okay. What else do you do? Well, for ultra high net worth clients, I provide family office services. Okay. What else do you do? And so for each one of those specific services that you provide, there's a technology infrastructure that has to be put together in a way that's sufficient, and not just sufficient, rather robust, to make sure that you're fulfilling your commitment to the client and also your mission critical ability to not only to survive, but to thrive. I mean, just little things like making sure that you've got a very robust cybersecurity plan and that you're training people. Anybody who has spent any time in this industry, or really just about most industries, the cybersecurity instances more often than not happen because of human error. It's because somebody clicked on something that they should have if they had just a modicum of training, or if they were just slow down the frames and then just click on any sort of random thing in their inbox, they're able to sidestep a lot of problems. But you have to have a lot of what if scenarios. You have to be prepared with whether you have the technology capabilities in-house with staff that are sufficiently capable, or having outside people. You have to do tabletop exercises as one example. So if, let's say this office gets wiped out, heaven forbid, a bad storm, a blizzard, or something worse, how are we going to take care of the clients, the team members and the clients that are out of that office? One of the things that we did, for example, back in 2019, we had done a transaction with a firm in Westport, Connecticut. Wonderful people. The technology, though, that they were using was a bit dated. And so one of the first things that we did was we upgraded their telecommunications systems, and we also moved them into the cloud. We moved ourselves into the cloud at the time. And we were making some pretty significant investments in technology and that technology infrastructure. A lot of it's not necessarily super sexy, but it's a necessary evil. And at the time, what was I thinking about? Well, we were thinking about blizzards, and we were thinking about hurricanes, and we were thinking about how, heaven forbid, like mass shooter events, like what happens if this office goes down? How are we taking care of our clients? One of the things we weren't thinking about in 2019 was a global pandemic, that we would have to send people home and have them not come back for several months. But fortunately, because of the investments we made in 2019 to push everything into the cloud, to really kind of develop a robust capability to have outreach with clients, and so you could visit them in their living room virtually, as opposed to most of our client meetings before that were in person. So that was an opportunity for us to really, we saw a very, very quick return on our investment, so much so that within, from the moment in March of 2020 when we sent people home because we were concerned about their safety, we were able to literally move to a fully remote environment within 24 hours. And we didn't bring people back until months later. But in terms of other technology, whether you're talking about the financial planning, the performance reporting, all of those all have to be not just good in their own right, but you also want to end up having some sort of coherent integration plan. So I know I've been going on for a while about technology. I get excited about it.
Yeah,
So those are some of my thoughts.
I love it. Well, I'm gonna keep you going. So, a lot of this industry likes to talk about how integrations are broken or things like that. And what I have discovered when you ask the question behind the question, it's like, well, why do you want to have good integrations, right? That's a means to an end. So what's the purpose of having it? I've found it really comes down to two things, which is they want more comprehensive reporting because, there's data in multiple places and they want that data integrated for better reporting or analytics. Or the other thing is they want better workflow, right? Hey, my workflows keep getting interrupted by the fact that the data from this system doesn't talk to the data to that system. But for you, coherent integrations in your technology strategy, what does it boil down to for GYL?
If you want to end up doing something well, then you have to have a standard operating procedure that you're able to execute with a high degree of accuracy. And you have to have data integrity. And you have to make sure it runs like a Swiss clock. And if you have any sort of desire to grow, whether it be organically or inorganically, you need to have a platform that can scale. So unless, of course, these integrations work and you're not having your team members bogged down in one broken connection or one issue or one snafu after the other, these are systems that have to be redundant, robust, and, hate to use the word so often, but well integrated, whether it be asset flows or information, financial information that can populate or migrate from your performance reporting system into your CRM so that you could have, whether it be a client associate or whether it be a wealth advisor, live more within one system as opposed to another. Just thinking about, okay, if I want to end up having a discrete task, how many keystrokes is involved in that? Just doing some of that time and space type analysis of like, hey, we need to be able to make this easier, because if our team members are bogged down in things that are not efficient to be able to execute for clients, then it takes away from what is the real value that we bring to the table. It's spending time with clients. It's the understanding what their needs are, or being, for those clients where this is relevant, going deep in terms of understanding strategies that might be useful for them. But it's not in terms of figuring out or trying to, spitball your way through a tech snafu that just happened. That is not what we would say the highest and best use of anybody's time, except for the technology people. And hopefully, if you've got a robust system, that's not happening every day. That's probably, from a frustration standpoint, before we've gone in and made system changes and enhancements. And let's say we've come together with other people and you ask them, like, what's working? Tell me what's not. Then certainly some of those trials and tribulations factor prominently in the list of challenges. That, one of the things that we do, it's just part of our culture, is that we do quarterly happy hours. And so we rotate around. So yesterday I was in our Westport office, and it's a great opportunity for me to not only see friends, but also go on a somewhat of an informal listening tour, because I want to hear what's working, what's not, what do you need? What do you need to do a better job for our clients? So that's how we roll.
That's awesome. And then I think a question about that too is, how much do you rely on focus to provide that type of stuff versus you taking that into your own control and saying, hey, we're going to go make this happen, obviously with Focus's support and blessing. But, how much are you saying, hey, this is one of the reasons we partnered with them. We want to plug into what they're doing and take what they're offering versus, we're going to control our own destiny with this?
Yeah, I can tell you that making the decision to come together with Focus back in August of 2016, I would rank up there amongst some of the best decisions, business decisions that I've ever made with my other partners like John Yoles and Michael Lepore and Claire McDonald, who were the original partners that were part of GYL. And the reason why I say that is, okay, are we reasonably competent people? Yes. Do we share a love and affinity for our clients and do whatever we can to service them? Yes. Just because you're a good advisor doesn't mean that you're good at running businesses. Doesn't mean that you have either the aptitude or the interest in making sure the trains run well on time or laying down the tracks in the first place. That's a very kind of individualized personal examination that each person who's thinking about going independent or growing a business, that they have to have a heart-to-heart with themselves and with their significant others and with their partners who are involved in that endeavor. Do I think that we could have accomplished a lot without them? Yeah, I think we would have done pretty well. But do I believe that they helped us to shorten that learning curve and helped us to be able to benefit from the size and scale that they had? Without a doubt, that was extremely beneficial. The other thing that was also beneficial about the relationship with Focus is that at least twice a year, I have the opportunity to meet up with partners from other Focus firms. So there's 90 plus firms globally. And I've made some very close friends with those partners, and we've collaborated and we've shared what's working for us and what are some of the challenges that we're seeing and vice versa. And through that ability to collaborate with some of the top advisors and top professionals in the country, it's been really transformative for us in being able to be better versions of ourselves. Because for us, and maybe I should have said this before, but we embrace the Kaizen mindset of continuous improvement. So the opportunity to collaborate with really talented people in our industry on a pretty regular basis and see, okay, well, there's no ego. Take your ego, put it in a box over by the front door and just come in and just share what's working, what's not working. And through those types of honest exchanges, we've gotten a lot better, a lot faster than we otherwise would have.
Really well stated. Kudos, Focus Financial. What a commercial that was for them, and I think they've earned it. We've talked to a handful of firms that are there, and there tends to be very little buyer's remorse, if you will, from working with them.
Yeah, what I can tell you is that in some of the environments that I was previously, again, wonderful people. There are good people, and it doesn't make a difference what business model you're in. But in more of the traditional brokerage wirehouse environment, very often is the case that there's very few people that are truly sharing outside of their immediate practice because everybody's viewed as competition. And so there's a little bit less in the way of collaboration, at least in my experience in that environment, whereas it was completely different, sea change. There were people that when we first joined the Focus family that were comparable size, and then you had some that had businesses that were dramatically larger, that were so generous in terms of what they were sharing, in terms of best practices and different workflows and different solutions. And I was like, wow. And I remember after going to our first partners meeting, I went back, I looked at my partners, I said, whew, we could be so much better.
Yeah. Well stated. Okay, so you alluded to this before. I want to get to the segment where I ask you to get out your crystal ball and talk a little bit about where you think the future of the industry is headed. So maybe you foreshadowed a little bit earlier with long-term care or helping people through those aspects of things, but it doesn't have to be limited to that. Where do you see the industry going, and what are you preparing for as a CEO and leader of a growing financial firm?
My crystal ball is probably as chipped and as opaque as anybody else's, but I'll give my best shot. First, I would say something that I alluded to beforehand. We're seeing an aging out of advisors. We're not seeing as many advisors get into this, or as many people get into this industry as are necessary, as are needed. That's going to create real opportunity for those of us who have businesses that are situated and well positioned for the future. So if you think about some of the meta changes that are happening, you're still seeing a flow of clients and assets that are moving from the wirehouse environment to more of the independent universe. So that's one big change that's been happening for the last decade or so, and it doesn't seem to be abating. Another big change, as we know, is there's a pretty significant generational transfer of wealth. So for those of us in the industry, very often you'll hear people refer to that as money in motion. And then last but not least, in the independent channel, it's not to say that you still can't end up having a $100 million advisory business. I mean, those exist, but it's getting harder because of the level of complexity. And I alluded to some of the issues, whether it be from compliance, cybersecurity, other regulatory items. It takes time, it takes resources. And when you think about what is your value proposition, it's no longer enough to be competent at being able to manage money. That's not sufficient. Maybe 5, 10, 15 years ago, you were aces, perfectly fine. That by itself, not enough, because there's plenty of firms out there that do an exceptional job managing money. What's different? What's unique about you? And so for us, I've already alluded to some of those items. I would unpack a little bit further. The aging life care services, it's not just about evaluating a long-term care policy, which is important, but it's also understanding if you have somebody who is starting to experience some loss of capability, and that's scary for anybody. Well, how is that going to manifest itself? Is it going to be their significant other? Is it going to be their spouse? Is it going to be their child who's going to come forward and say, what do I do? Somebody call a play here because I don't really know what I'm doing. So instead, if you deal with that more proactively and think about, okay, I need help with understanding what are the possibilities? What are the options if I were to go into an assisted living facility? What if I want to be able to age with resilience at home? What type of modifications have to happen at my house? What are those other things that need to happen to be able to accommodate that? And further, what are the resources? What are the people that are going to be there? Is there somebody going to be there available to balance my meds? What types of other home health care supports do I need? So our ability to have an expert in-house that could provide that type of support, working in collaboration with the wealth advisors, to work with the clients or to work with their children, to make sure that they have that continuum of care, because they've worked their whole life to be able to grow that nest egg. To see it disappear or dissipated by virtue of not having the right type of life experience in those later chapters in life, that shouldn't be the outcome. So we see that as just one of the additional value-added services that we're going to be providing, which we think is going to get traction. Another thing that we rolled out a couple of years ago is what we often refer to as family office services for mere mortals. Very often people talk about family office services, and immediately most people are saying like, well, you probably need 100 million, 200 million, 500 million to have like a family office. Well, what if you have 10, 15, 20, even $30 million, and you got a couple of homes, you have a little bit of complexity in your estate plan. Maybe you've got some liquid investments. So you got K1s coming at you, capital calls, quarterly statements, and like. And before you know it, that complexity, even if you are not experiencing any sort of cognitive declines, you're like, wow, this is a lot. I got a lot coming at me. So that would be an example of an area that we're able to accommodate now because of what we've built out, which is that family office capability for mere mortals. So we can scale it up or scale it down and customize it to whatever the specific client's needs are. So it could give them the ability to age with resilience and be able to live life on their terms.
I love that last point too, by the way. It seems interesting, like it'd be a small segment of the population, but from what I've been reading and researching and talking to a lot of people, I think that segment of the 10 to $30 million, net worth person is like one of the fastest growing, but most underserved segments of the population, because they might not have all the complexity, like you said, of a traditional family office, but they definitely need more than, what your typical sort of wealth management offering is. And kind of this sandwich piece where it's like, they're obviously very wealthy, but, not wealthy enough to be way up here with the, billionaires and the centimillionaires. But the complexity is there because they're probably angel investing in their buddies' things. And, all of a sudden, like you said, they've got a dozen K1s. They're like, why is my tax return 250 pages now all of a sudden, right? And
exactly. And doing any sort of tax returns now, which include K1s have gotten so much more complicated, and that's coming at a price premium in terms of what your accountants are are charging in connection with that. And it just has this roll down effect. So to the extent that you could end up having, you could use some technology, for example, to be able to simplify that. Like we've, I don't think I've mentioned any companies yet, but I'll give you one, which is this technology. It's called Arch.
Yep.
Arch is a great way to be able to sync in yours. You go to one place, one sign on, and you can get access to, once it's established, of course, and you could end up seeing all of your K1s in one place, your capital statements, all of your liquid investments in one place. And for us, we have it linked into the client's portfolio performance report. That gets back to that technology and that integration. So it makes it a lot easier because more often than not, before that, and for many people, you have to manually input their alternatives into a performance reporting system. And that just takes up time and energy. It doesn't mean that you don't have to quality control this. You have to quality control everything. But to be able to have those linkages where that information is being ported in. But as a client, to the extent that you can go to one place instead of, I forget all my logins and passwords. I have to reestablish them every time I go in. So now I have to just do it with one place, and I can go in and get access to all that information, and I can provision access from my accountant to be able to pull that information in. So that's just one way to simplify your life. But what we'll do is we'll aggregate and assist a client in terms of making their tax prep that much easier. So it's not unduly burdensome for them or for their accountant.
All right, man. We are going to move to the final segment of the show, which is what I call the Milemarker Minute. This is kind of a lightning round segment where I'm going to ask you some fun, lighthearted questions. You answer them as fast as you can. The goal is to get all of the questions answered in a minute or less. I'm not going to hold you totally to it, but that's what we're aiming for, some short, punchy answers. So are you ready?
Try my best.
Somebody who's never been to your neck of the woods in Connecticut, they come up for the very first time. Where is the single best place for them to have dinner in Connecticut and enjoy it?
I would say come to my backyard and have a barbecue.
Oh, fantastic. I love that answer. That's amazing. Where is one place in the world that you would love to travel that you've never been to before?
Iceland. I've been to Reykjavik, but I haven't gone into the fjords and explored all those different areas. And it's not so far away. It's not like we're going to Timbuktu. Yep. I should be able to get that done.
You can make that happen. If I understood my research correctly, I think you did some professorial work for the University of Hartford. What is the most fulfilling thing about doing that work?
To be able to take, and there are parallels to this. Oh, wait a second. I got to be under the minute. So I would say just taking complex subjects and making them easier for people to understand.
I love it. And then I've been loving asking this question to everybody lately, but if you weren't a financial advisor and you were to take a completely different career path, what do you think you'd be doing if you weren't doing this?
I'd be in the CIA.
CIA, all right.
Listen, I've always been interested in strategic thinking and I love our country. And so to the extent that I'm able to make a contribution to it, that would be where I would be.
I love it. All right. Well, you got through the Milemarker Minute. Typically, I would go ahead and wrap it up, but I'm just morbidly curious about where you were going to take things on the professorial work with the University of Hartford. So I'd love for you to expound on that just a little bit about some of the fulfillment you got out of that, or the rewards that you got out of taking complex things and simplifying them for students.
So one of the things that I really enjoy about my role now is that I love building communities and I love coaching people. And so if you're a professor, you're taking subject matter that people may or may not have, depending upon what level of course it is, they may or may not have competence or capability or background in, and introducing them to it. And to me, it's fascinating to me. When I was in undergrad, I had an opportunity for the first time. They had opened up for undergraduates the opportunity to become a teacher's assistant for a political science class in world politics. The opportunity to work not only collectively with the students, but also individually to help people who are having trouble taking on board, new information about whatever the subject was. And so there are tremendous parallels between what happens there and what happens when we're together with clients, because you're taking subject matter that depending upon what their needs are. Now, some people don't really care, like it's like people who get on a plane and say, look, I don't need to know about the, 50 millions of miles of wire that go through this plane. I just need to know I'm going to get on in New York, and I'm going to be dropped off in LA, and I'm going to be fine. Other people really like to dig into the details. So the opportunity to be able to share that, it's something that I'm passionate about. And so in that case, it was on deferred compensation. And so if there's an area, if there's a subject that I feel that I could contribute value to, then I love taking the time, whether it be with a client or whether it be a student in a class, and helping them to gain something out of it. I mean, if you literally could metaphorically touch just one student in the entire class and make a difference in that person's life, then you will have accomplished something that's really positive.
What a great way to end. Thank you so much for spending time here with us on the Connected Advisor and sharing your wisdom and insight. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I'm very appreciative.
Yeah, Kyle, it was a pleasure to speak with you. I really enjoyed our time together, and look forward to seeing how this gets played back.
Likewise. Okay, everybody, that's been another episode of the Connected Advisor. Please make sure to click follow or subscribe wherever you're listening to this so you don't miss another episode. And we will see you on the next one.